people with disabilities lack the awareness. They do not have the right awareness that they need. And I often want to tell people that when you talk about disability and awareness, don't look at people like me or people who live in the urban areas. Think about those who live in your villages. There has been a great improvement in inclusion for persons with disabilities at the national level. But I'd like you to think about a person with a disability you know from your village. How much do they know, or how aware are they to be able to make the kind of decisions or contributions that people are making at the urban setting? So there's a wide gap between how much people with disabilities at the urban setting can do as opposed to those who are in the grassroots and in the villages. First, they don't even know if they have rights. In most villages, people with disabilities are still being treated in very, very disdaining manner. They are being discriminated. They are being looked down on. Like they are facing the worst of the marginalization you can imagine. So participation for people with disabilities should look like they should be able to go to the poll and vote by themselves. For instance, if any other person goes to vote, they go to the poll by themselves to vote alone. So nobody even gets to know who you are voting. It's your decision. It's something that is just for you alone. But if a blind person goes to vote because they are not able to do that on their own, they can even be deceived. Imagine if they want to vote for APC and the person who is managing that polling unit wants them to vote for PDP or any other party. They can tell them this is PDP, this is APC, and they'll vote at the wrong place, right? So inclusion or participation should look like people being able to make their decisions independently. And there are some people with disabilities that may need support with making their decision, but support should not take away agency. What this simply means is that even if you are going to support someone, you are not supposed to take away their agency to participate. They should be able to say, decide on their own that, oh, I think I have the capacity, I want to run for office. Or they should be able to say, for me, I think I want to join this political party. But you see, there is a gap in the number of people with disabilities who are even interested in participating in political parties, talk more of running for office. There are a very limited number of people that will say, okay, me, I want to be part of the hearing that they're having today at the National Assembly because I think this particular issue concerns me. Because over time, exclusion has taken away the agency and autonomy of people with disabilities. So they rely on other people to make decisions for them. And by doing this, they do not allow their lived experiences to reflect in the kind of policies or decisions that are being made. And then this shapes how public policies are being made. Like I said, if people with disabilities are not participating, especially when it comes to decisions that concerns them, they are not able to shape public policies or influence how public policies reflect people with disabilities. So when we talk about participation, oftentimes people are going to think that participation is presence. And I want you all to take this like beyond the space of talking about disability, talking about even young people. Participation and presence are not the same thing. Being present in a room is different from being able to participate in that room. I'll give you an instance which speaks to tokenism, because sometimes participation is tokenized, where people are brought together or brought in the room just to tick the box and said, and when we're doing this, we had 10 young people who came. It's not a question of if the young people were in the room. It's not a question of if the young people, if the people with disabilities were in the room. The question is, were they able to participate? The question is, were you able to support young people to be able to participate? For instance, maybe the government decides that, okay, we want to have a consultation, bring in the young people who are designing the budget for this year. So let the young people also participate in this process. And then they don't even tell you which young people. So maybe the young people that they decide to bring are ministers' children, senators' children. Those young people do not relate to the everyday Nigerian youth challenges. They do not relate to the circumstances that everyday Nigerian youth have to go through. So they may not even, they may be there, they may participate, but maybe what they are bringing is their experiences from the Western world, because most of them are able to relate more with the Western world or things that happen in the Western world. So they are not able to represent the real realities of Nigerian youth that are in the streets, that are in public universities, that are in public institutions trying to make ends meet. So bringing those kind of people does not even speak to representation, does not speak to participation, does not speak to even being present in the room. Another instances, young people now brought into, okay, let's say everyday young people are brought into that room where the budget is being made. But then the language there is not the language that the young people in Nigeria are familiar with. So they are there, but they're not able to participate because the language they are speaking is not explanatory enough for them to understand and make contribution. So it now makes them present, but doesn't make them to participate. So when you bring young people in the room, it is not just enough that they're in the room. It also talks about what support you are giving them to be able to participate, how their voices are even counted in those rooms. Let's say when they make decisions, how when they make contributions, how are those contributions accepted? How are those contributions related to, or how are they even represented or reflected when policies are being made? So it is a different thing to bring someone into the room, and it's another thing to ensure that they are able to participate meaningfully, not just participate meaningfully. So you can see from my example, tokenism is one person with a disability invited for appearance. Imagine how many, so many different type of disabilities we have, and then you single that one particular person and you bring them out so that they just appear in the room and you say, yes, we brought people with disabilities. I have never been blind. I don't understand the challenges in full reality that what blind people go through. I can only talk from what I've heard them say, but I cannot speak about blindness from a point of someone who has been blind. Same way, I cannot speak about the challenges of persons with albinism that will stem from my own experience. I can only speak about that based on what I've heard them say. So it is not enough to bring one person with a disability into the room, tick the box and say, yes, we're inclusive. We brought a person with a disability. Meaningful participation for people with disabilities means that they are able to make decisions or influence the decisions and outcomes about issues, particularly those issues that affect them. It is very important to ensure that through our designing or projects, we are not just bringing people with disabilities to make up a number and tick a box. The question you will ask yourself is, this thing I want to decide, are persons with disabilities consulted? Are their recommendations implemented? Do they occupy positions that make them speak out and make valuable contributions, maybe in leadership positions or leadership settings? And you may even want to just reflect about it and think, how many institutions in Nigeria are actually including persons with disabilities? Because many institutions will claim that they are inclusive because one person with a disability was present. But that does not speak to inclusion, because the real meaning of inclusion is that they are able to share power across diverse disabilities. And the diversity of this conversation is that there's a difference between, you see, we also, when we talk about gender, we talk about male and female, we're talking about their challenges. These challenges also come into perspective when we talk about inclusion for people with disabilities. What a woman with a disability would need to be included is different from what a man with a disability would need to be included. Again, economic capacity will also come to play, and level of literacy. An educated person with a disability has the capacity to say that they can make decisions. You cannot treat that person or program for that person the same way you program for a person with a disability who lives in the village, who does not have access to information, who does not have the same level of literacy as those who live in urban settings. For example, I like to tell people they are also the most marginalized within marginalized communities. I may be a person with a disability, but I have more opportunities. I have more access to opportunities. So if your aim is to reach the most marginalized of marginalized people, then I am not your target. You should target those who are in rural areas, who are in grassroots communities that do not have access to these opportunities. So it is very important to understand that people with disabilities are not a homogeneous group. You shouldn't plan for them and say, oh, we have ramps, it's okay, you can come. Beyond a ramp, inclusion is not just a ramp. Inclusion goes beyond a ramp. Inclusion goes down to how you are able to ensure that these people are in the room and are able to participate, and not just participate, but giving the support to participate meaningfully. So, what does, in the reality of things, what does inclusion in governance and in participation mean or look like in the context of Nigeria? Sorry, I have to take. Yeah. So, what does it actually look like in the context of Nigeria? I mentioned earlier there's been progress. We cannot say there's not been progress, because I know that even within this room, we've interacted with people with disabilities, we've been able to um, relate to their abilities and what they can do and all of that. So there's been a growth, there's been changes, there's been a lot of progress now for people with disabilities. Right now, we have a growing movement of people with disabilities. You always find them, and organizations, just as you see the Fasasi Youth Foundation is doing, they are ensuring that this group is not being left behind. That's progress, because they have made it intentional to ensure that you are able to learn about inclusion, not just to bring you together and talk about these things, but you are able to relate with it from the perspective of both a person with a disability and also learn from it. So there's been great progress, and a lot of organizations are beginning to key into the movement for inclusion to ensure that people with disabilities are not left behind. And kudos to the Fasasi Youth Foundation for the great work they are doing to ensure that young people are able to come to terms with what inclusion looks like, so that when you go back to your various institutions, you are able to, even if you don't have a disability, you are able to speak out on these things, and you are able to contribute to ensure that people with disabilities are not excluded but are included. So there's been growing movement, and then we have laws that now speak to disability inclusion, and then we have increased visibility of what disability rights are. So as you are here now, you already know that people with disabilities have their right to speak. So you give them the right to speak, you allow them to speak, and then you hear from them, and then you make decisions with their lived experience, not that you decide before you now bring them in. So there's great visibility across Nigeria on disability rights. As good as the progress has been, we still have few challenges. Some of the challenges include, we have the policies, but are they being implemented? Because the disability law went into action as of 2019. It means 2019 to now, it's been over 5 years. But we can see that from the point of implementation, it is still very, very low. We are still at the point where we are still asking for the things that the disability law said should be done in 5 years. And I often tell people that the work does not end when a policy is made. The work ends when people are able to see the benefit of a policy in their life. For instance, we have the disability law, and it says 5% employment for people with disabilities. Yet we cannot hear a lot of people say, oh, we have employment here and we have 5 quota reserved for people with disabilities. We rarely hear those things, not to say that they don't happen, but it is very rare that you see such publications. We still have other aspects like the transport aspect that ensures that all transport systems, both land, air, rail, water, is made accessible for people with disabilities. People with disabilities are still struggling to travel because they are not made accessible or inclusive to them. And generally, we have this law, which is a very beautiful law, but what we cannot see currently is the implementation of this law, which is a very big gap. And sometimes, because people are unable to see progress with things like this, even seeking redress becomes a challenge. A lot of people are aware of this law, but they are not able to seek redress when they are violated based on what the provisions of these laws are. People with disabilities are growing. We have a growing movement. There's great visibility, but there's still very poor representation of people with disabilities. And for me, I don't like to only blame institutions for this. I also want to bring in the part of people with disabilities. How much are they striving to get into rooms and be represented? Because some of them are still caught in the whole tokenism, and they just want to be there. Even when you bring them to room, they do not make so much effort to participate or to speak or to share their perspective. Accessibility is still one of the greatest challenges that people with disabilities are facing, and they are totally not in decision making rooms. Sometimes they are there, but I think we can also applaud the government of Nigeria because they have made fragments or structures through which people with disabilities can participate in the decision making. It now boils down to the leadership within the structure of persons with disability. The structure has been created, but it also boils down to how these structures are being used to ensure that people with disabilities participate in decision making. So policy matters. It matters that we have policy, but implementation matters even more. So the question here is not whether we have the laws or whether the rights are being translated into law. The question is, are people with disabilities able to see the benefits of these laws? Because if they are not able to see the benefits of this law, then it means that the law is not working or it's not serving the purpose that it was meant to serve. So we've talked about what exclusion looks like, what are the barriers, and we've also talked about the reality of exclusion in Nigeria, what progress have been made and what challenges still remains. Lastly, we are going to look at what does inclusion look like. Now that we are aware of what exclusion looks like, it looks like not giving people the right access, not giving them access to information. We've spoken about the fact that sometimes people are there, but they are not there to talk. They're just there for being their sake. So what will inclusion actually look like in governance? It will look like accessible buildings and structures. It will look like information made accessible. It looks like technology that is accessible and adapt to disability inclusion, transportation system that makes it easy for people with disabilities to move. And it also looks like participation. When we talk about participation, people with disabilities are consulted before decisions are made for them. They are engaged in making decisions about their issues or making decisions or engaging with decision-making processes. And they are also given leadership opportunities. But remember, people with disabilities should not be given the leadership simply because they have disabilities. They should be given leadership positions or opportunities because they have the capacity. And in the case where they do not have this capacity, they can be provided the resources or given the support that takes them from not having the capacity to having the capacity. And finally, representation. Representation where persons with disabilities are in decision-making rooms, not just for being in decision-making rooms, but to shape the decisions that are being made, especially about their issues or issues that concerns them. And lastly, actions for change. So at this point, I would like to hear from you, having heard all of this about exclusion, about what inclusion will look like, about the challenges. What actions do you think that you can take as a person or as a group or as young people? How do you think you can take actions for change towards the inclusion of persons with disabilities? Or maybe how do you intend to use your voice to impact this change?
Can I use to answer, ma'am?
Go
Yes,
ahead,
ma'am.
Mustafa.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much for that in-depth and profound comprehension in the aspects of that disability. In fact, you've highlighted a lot of things that are a bit, not so visible in the aspect of the disability. Now, you mentioned how can we use our voice, or in what manner do we use our voice? Well, I was able to jot down certain things from certain points which you've mentioned in terms of tackling. So I think the first thing there is disability is not the problem from what you've said so far, but handling it is the obstacle. So I think now that disability is not a problem, it's handling it that is the obstacle. I think the first way I would get to use my voice in attending to this issue is to provide awareness and necessary resources to letting the masses know to change the image of disability in the community, as you stated earlier. Secondly, I also make use of my voice to eliminate physical barriers which could hinder the prosperity in the aspect of disability. Also, I also try to see that I use my voice in the aspect of implementing policies and, most importantly, not just implementing, but periodic scrutinization, periodic scrutinization to ensure that the policies have not just been implemented, but the disability personnel are seeing the benefits, are seeing the green light, because when the green light is being seen, that would serve as a turning point to changing the image, to eliminating physical barriers, and many more to come. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mustafa. Thank you. I hear you about awareness and about accountability, ensuring that policies are not just there but are being reflected in the lives of people with disabilities, and also using your voice to create awareness for the inclusion of persons with disabilities. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to give us their call to action for change, or how they want to use their voice to ensure that people with disabilities are included? Anyone? I think we I still have a lot of people here. Or maybe you want to use the chat box. We're about to round up. I just want to get some few responses or call to action from you, from your end. It could just be like anything, just something you think can help to see that there's a shift in exclusion to inclusion for persons with disabilities.
Thank you very much, Ma. So I feel there's section for question and answer, interactive section for question and answer. We want to thank you very much, Ma, for this insightful and thought-provoking presentation. I have learned a lot personally, one of which you said inclusion is not just having a ramp. Inclusion goes beyond having a ramp. And then you said democracy cannot be strong if every other person is not considered in participation. I believe today's discussion has reminded us that disability inclusion is not an act of charity. It is a matter of rights, dignity, representation, and justice. We will now move into our interactive section. Participants who have questions may indicate in the chat box or raise their virtual hands. But before we take questions from participants, I would like to ask a question on behalf of the fellowship community now. Um, Ma, many people are passionate about inclusion but do not know where to start. What practical steps can students, student leaders take within their institutions to make governance and student activities more inclusive for persons with disability? Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Aisha, for that question. And I'll just share briefly my time in the university when I was a student. And I think it didn't just start with me. It started with my mates recognizing that I had difficulties. As at that time, I had not even gone into, delved into inclusion or advocacy for inclusion. I was just a person with a disability struggling to complete my education, go to school, and make myself relevant. So I remember how I had this friend who started asking, like, I think I came late for class one day, and she asked the lecturer, is it not fair that you give her like 30 minutes or 20 minutes more than you give every other person? At least she's not able to run like the rest of us. She's not able to walk like the rest of us. So how about you make this provision for her to come maybe 20 minutes late or 30 minutes late? And the way she spoke about it, the lecturer just nodded and allowed me to go in. I think after that time, my classmates started advocating for me. I started advocating. I started saying that, okay, why can't you just give us maybe 30 minutes if we are people with disabilities? And why can't you try to see if maybe a person with a disability is taking this course? Excuse me, instead of putting it upstairs, why can't we have it maybe on a ground floor classrooms? And I can tell you that throughout my university, I never went to class in an upstairs. All my lectures were designed in such a way that they were all going to ground floor classrooms. So sometimes it just takes a little as much as talking about something you see. And sometimes as young people, we think that since a situation does not concern us, it is not our problem. But in the reality of things is that we are not, freedom is not free until all of us are free, like they like to say it. So the fact that you are not a person with a disability does not make you to stand away and watch other people's rights being taken away from them because they have disabilities. So you've asked me of practical steps on how to start. You could start by just making conversations. Maybe in your student union body, they are making decisions and you see that this decision does not in any way reflect inclusion for people with disabilities. You can say, okay, no, let's not forget about the fact that there are people with disabilities also in this school. There are people with disabilities we also have to consider. It's the same way if a conversation is being made or is being heard about women, and you see that, no, this thing does not include the men. We are going to say, okay, it's good that we are trying to protect the women, but how about the men? Most times I hear people ask those questions. So you don't have to be part of those facing the problem to be able to advocate. It is just you seeing that, oh, we've talked about this. Oh, we've decided to have a party, but it's on the third floor and people with disabilities cannot come to this party. How about we make it on the ground floor so that they can all attend? Or you decide to say, okay, maybe in our class now, we have one person who is blind. Maybe me, I can continue to speak about it. How about our lecturer send him notes virtually so that he's going to access them? How about I have to prepare the note in a slide and send to him? You can even start creating slides of all the notes if you have a blind classmate and you share the slide, you put everything, you type everything down and you share with them. By that, you are creating change. And I always tell people, don't think that disability inclusion is only a problem of persons with disabilities, because there's a thin line between having a disability and not having a disability. So it concerns every one of us. The more we make the world or governance inclusive, the more we create a pathway to have diverse opportunities or diverse perspective to move forward with governance. I hope I was able to answer your question, Aisha.
Yes, thank you very much, Ma. And there were two questions in the chat box, so I would like to read them out to you. One of which came from Madaki Jajiri. He says, my question is, can people with disabilities aspire for any leadership position, or there should be a specific leadership position for them? Like, should there be a specific leadership position for them?
Thank you so much, Madaki. That's a very interesting question. So, like I always tell people, I think gradually all people with disabilities are becoming advocates for disability inclusion, which is very good. But people with disabilities are doing other great and amazing things in life. They are not just being in the world of advocacy. People with disabilities are out there taking positions or making taking strides in different parts of lives. We have doctors with disabilities, we have nurses who have disabilities, we have pastors who have disabilities. People with disabilities can take up space in any walk of life as long as they are interested and they have the capacity to occupy those positions. I think one of the mistake people always make is that people with disabilities should work in the disability sector. I remember last year I was having a conversation with some people. I was trying to find out about their career aspirations versus what they are doing now. And it was so I don't know how if to say interesting or really it was really, really saddening to hear when the deaf people spoke with me. They said, okay, some of them wanted to be engineers when they got into the university, but because there was no reasonable accommodation in those courses, they did not have sign language interpreters in those kind of courses, they had no option than to do special education. Most times in university settings, people with disabilities are made to study special education because they think that is what they want to do in life. But they have other aspirations, they have things they want to do. There are some people with disabilities that want to become pilots, they want to become engineers, but then those courses are not made available or accessible to them. You would always see that blind people, they try most blind people that take up professional courses are lawyers. And I asked a friend, why is that most blind people are lawyers? And they said, yeah, because we are so intelligent, but we can only do so much with law because that only involves us reading and understanding a lot. But if you want to do something like medicine, there are lots of practicals that I cannot see and nobody is there to ensure that I'm able to understand what is going on. So the most of us can do is take a career in law. But people with disabilities are able to occupy any space if they want to. The mistake is that people always want to cancel people with disabilities from the perspective of their disability, which is why we have more people with disabilities taking special education courses as opposed to the plans they had for their careers. Madaki, I hope I was able to answer your question. You can unmute or give. Okay, I see your thumbs up. Did we have
Okay,
another question?
thank you so much, Ma. So is this a second question came in from Madaki, and I think there's a contribution also where he said, I feel the way I will use my voice is to create advocacy for inclusion and also ensure that people with disabilities themselves have the confidence in themselves and the belief that they can do it even more better. So I think that's a contribution. But then he has another question which says, how will one influence people with disabilities to believe in themselves? Because I feel they have this inferiority complex to participate in decision making and not only being present.
Yes, that's a very important point to raise. Like I said before, people with disabilities over time, they have started to internalize the marginalization they've been faced with. You would see that they can be in the room, but they do not want to participate because they are not confident enough in what they have to say. But I think it's a matter of I think training and restructuring. For instance, I may not be very good. I'm looking for a good. Okay, for instance, you cannot take me to a room where public health or health conversations are being held. While I may have basic understanding, I may feel inferior to contribute to that conversation because I do not really have the understanding of what the health sector or what is happening in the public health sector. But if you take me to a place where they are talking policy, I will be able to make more contributions. So it's up to you to now decide. I have three people with disabilities working with me. I know that one of them is going to do well in the public policy sector. One is going to do well in the public health sector. One is going to do well in STEM. You can't just push me to go to STEM because I have a disability and want to make decision about people with disabilities in the STEM industry. If I go there, I'll become inferior. So also counting or countering what level of capacity people have helps. And also supporting these people to participate by training them. If you really wanted someone to make impact, you first of all have to educate them. We can never talk enough about education and awareness for people with disabilities because they've been systematically and society and culturally marginalized over a period of time that they feel inferior on how they make decisions or how they even contribute to society. Many people with disabilities cannot even face people, like look at people uprightly because they feel inferior due to the kind of treatment they have received over time. And even I would also bring this back to homes or even in friendship circles. For instance, you have a sibling that has a disability. And most times when you are deciding what to eat in the house, you ask everybody, but you don't ask them simply because you think they have a disability. So it doesn't matter. They cannot decide. From that moment, you are taking away the power of deciding from them. Or you have a child that has autism, has Down syndrome, has intellectual disability, and you want to buy dresses for them, and then you decide what you want. Whereas you can ask other children what you want. So most times people from home, I think I'm seeing a comment, exclusion starts from home. Inclusion also starts from home. Because you have a person with a disability who has autism does not mean you should not ask them their opinion. So those kind of things, they continue to encourage exclusion, even right from friendship circles and from home. You have a group of friends and you are deciding what drink you want to have. Everybody gets a beer. Then when it comes to your friend with a disability, you give them mineral. You've taken away their right to decide. So over time, they feel like people have to decide for me and I don't have to decide. So we have to start restructuring this and re-educating people right from the homes, right from the community. You can't push people to go to decision-making rooms and go and participate there when they've not even been able to participate in their church or in their friendship circle or in their community. So inclusion starts right from the home or right from the bottom. It doesn't start at the top. You can't take me to go and see the president without preparing me or giving me support of what to say. And then you expect me to go there and be so eloquent. When where I'm coming from a place where I have to speak and count and be sure that people are agreeing what I have to say. So I think we have to decipher between what people can do as people with disability as well, than to put them in a bait where you just take them to a very high level decision-making platform and you expect them to participate. So inclusion starts right from the bottom. It doesn't start at the top. It starts from the bottom and it goes to the top. I hope I was able to answer that question.
Thank you very much, Ma. So I think this is a contribution from Nancy Arigo. She said, thank you for the educative section, Ma. It was an eye-opener. And then she further went, um, she further says, here is my contribution on promoting the active participation of people with disability. It is necessary to encourage a person with disability to take on a leadership role. Some suffer from low self-esteem due to stereotypes and discrimination. Ensuring meetings and events are more physically and digitally accessible to prevent barriers. I would also speak up when I see exclusions or barriers on people with disability. Now I know better. People with disabilities also deserve to get a listening ear so their perspective can be captured better. So, and I would further proceed. This came from Mustafa. He said his question on grassroots engagement. He said, Ms. Jennifer, from your experience leading the Grassroots Women with Disabilities Alliance, What are the biggest everyday barrier that prevents women with disabilities from getting involved in local leadership? And how can governance programs like this fellowship better reach and support them? And then he says his second question was on inclusive policy design. He said when a government or organizations try to design inclusive policies, they often treat disability inclusion as a separate checklist item rather than integrating it from the start. What is one practical step policymakers can take to ensure that people with disabilities are actually co-designing these laws rather than just being passive beneficiaries? We appreciate you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Solomon. So the first question, my experience and challenges. Um, this question is really like a reflection even for me. Thank you so much for that question. So for women with disabilities at the grassroots, we are still at the stage of education and awareness. Earlier on, I had mentioned that there's a difference between me who lives in Abuja and has interacted with different people and have gained confidence from this interaction, as opposed to a woman with a disability who lives in my village. But that is the mistake that people make most times when programming. They program for me and that woman the same. I have a university degree. It means even job opportunities, I'm able to access them better. I have a smartphone. These are very distinctive difference that we have. I know how to use Instagram. I know how to use LinkedIn. I know how to send an email. I know how to use a Google form. You cannot give me the same opportunity as that woman who lives in my village. She does not even have a smartphone to start with. She may not even be able to read. She doesn't even know what a Google form is. So sometimes people have to be very intentional on how they program for people in the grassroots. It takes extra intentionality to ensure that your initiative or impact gets to the grassroots. Now, you've asked about my experience. Working with these women, I think I have a pathway where I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to create email addresses for all these women. I have 20 of them in one community. I'm trying to create emails for them so that I can be able to apply for things for them. It means that I have the responsibility to apply these things. I have to have these emails. I have to check these emails, because even if I create emails for these women and leave it in their phones, they're not going to check those emails. But then opportunities are there that are supposed to be for them, but are made available only on the internet. So sometimes we forget that people do not have the same access. If you are targeting grassroots communities, you have to go to the grassroots communities to find them. You cannot find grassroots women on social media. You can't find them on LinkedIn. So when you design projects and you keep them on LinkedIn and you said you want grassroots people to apply for them, you are not putting that out there for grassroots women, because they don't have the access. They cannot access it. So that is why for many donors, they target other organizations to target the grassroots foundations, because donors know that they are not able to reach the grassroots, so they reach the grassroots through other organizations. Now, this is where the conversation of how intentional people become with their programming to ensure that disability is no longer a checklist or a checkbox. People should ground themselves in community. Working with these women have taught me that it is not everything that is as expressed as we always think that they are. Now, if this program, like now we have this program, the Fantastic Youth Foundation have brought you up here. It doesn't end with you. The pathway is that after this training, you are also able to influence those within your circle, because they cannot reach everyone. So it does not have to end with you. After taking this session, how are you going to step this down to your community? How are you going to be, okay, how do I bring in maybe 10 of my friends and tell them what I have learned through the Fantasy Foundation? Through that, they also hear from you, and they now start gaining interest to say, okay, next year, if Fantasy Youth Foundation calls for application, I'm going to make sure I also apply. And you're also going to support them by saying, okay, since I've benefited from this, next year I'm going to help you. When they call for application, I know I have access to that information. I'm going to let you know so that you can apply on time and also get into this conversation so that you can hear by yourself. So to ensure that initiative does not just end, does not end with us. We have to create a pathway to also step down these trainings down to every other person. Now, organizations are working on inclusion, but they are making it look like it is a thing of people with disabilities. It's them, they should do their thing, but we only bring them in when we need them. Sadly, that's the reality of civil society in Nigeria. Some, because they do not have the right resources to actually delve into disability programming. Some, because that's not integrated into their areas of focus or thematic areas of working. But the truth is, we cannot continue to treat people with disabilities like a separate community, like a colony where they should be together and be doing their things together. We must ensure that when we talk about women, it is inclusive of all women, including women with disabilities. When we talk about young people, we are not just talking about young people that don't have disabilities. When we talk about young people, it is inclusive of young people with disabilities. So by the time we start incorporating disability and not segmenting or fragmenting disability, it now creates more synergy. But because, there's a saying that when things go, when people are marginalized so much, they tend to go the extreme to ensure that they are included. That is what is happening within the disability community. For instance, if you say that you want to work with only, you don't want to fragment, I promise you, most of these efforts will not reach people with disabilities. So sometimes fragmenting means creating a little quota so that people are able to get. So sometimes you see organizations say, okay, we have 10 youths. 3 of them should be people with disabilities. That's their effort to ensure that it reaches everyone. But if you don't create this smaller fragment, most times initiatives will not reach other people. That's why even in government, when people are over marginalized, they create quota systems to ensure that things reach people. So while you may look at it as structurally bad, it is also helping to ensure that initiatives reach people. When people set these quotas or smaller quotas, is to remind them that, okay, if we have 10, let's give 3 to people with disabilities. At least it's like a structure for them to remember that there are other people. So I would like to look at it from 2 areas. It is also good to integrate, but now that it is still a wide conversation where they are still very marginalized, it's okay to create fragments so that we are able to capture a comprehensive data of how people are including people with disabilities. I hope I was able to answer your question, Solomon.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So the last one actually. So I think this is a comment. The program for persons with disability. This came from Solomon. Sorry. Program for disability for persons with disability is mainly driven by the family because awareness goes beyond publication. Every community member, family, friend, and association must make it a mandate. Leaders across all sectors at the local, state, and federal government level must be self-aware of inclusion to prompt from them. A holistic approach is internal, not feelings. Well done, ma'am. Thank you so much. So, on this note, would officially want to thank you, ma, for the insightful section. Please, I want us to give ma'am a resounding virtual clap. Please keep it coming. Thank you so much, ma. A resounding virtual clap. Thank you so much, ma. Really appreciate you, ma.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me.
Thank you so much, ma. So on this note, we would like to have our virtual photograph. John, are you here? Please, let's all turn on our cameras for the virtual photograph. And while we're at it, please I would quickly drop the post test for this section. Please do well to engage with the post test. Post test. Thank you.
Madaki, please, next time you are joining a meeting, wear a cloth, not a singlet, please. This is a leadership training. Wear cloth, not singlet.
Just Aisha, just to mention, I will share the slides with you so that
Okay.
you can share with the fellows. And if there are any questions, you can also share my email for
All right.
them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. John, is it done? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. To smile for the pictures. Everyone is looking so serious. Actually, no prompt for us. You don't have any prompt to make us smile.
Madaki, you can smile now. Look at you are looking good.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
So
Ms.
let's
Jennifer. Thank you so much. We are grateful.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, can we hear? Are you guys hearing? Hello?
Hi, John. We can hear you.
Okay, I just need to check. Okay, so I want us to put on our best smile. I want us to put on our best smile on the camera, please. Mary, Ajara, Nancy, Oyemekine, so Yakubu. I want us guys on their camera. Please on our camera. Let's on our camera, please. I'm still waiting for us. Ajara, Mary.
Yakubu Ajara, Amina, on your camera.
Ajara, Oyom Matani.
John, please go ahead.
Correct?
Let's allow our participants. So, go ahead, please.
Okay, please. Listen to stop now. Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, everyone. I'm wishing you guys all the best with the rest of your fellowship. And yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn and via email. Thank you and bye.
Thank you so much. Please, can you drop your LinkedIn? Let's connect, please. All right.
Okay, when I'm sharing the slides, I will share my LinkedIn with the slides.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. All right, guys. Aisha, well done. Well done. Thank you so much for
Thank
the.
you, Mr. John. Mr. Sunday, please pre-test.
Aisha, well done. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Please, we will drop the pre-test on the group right now. Please do well to engage with it. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well done. Nice job.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I
Thank you
think
for
today is better than yesterday. We
yes.
have though all these our students, they are funny. Nancy, well done. You are still clapping. Nancy, you are still clapping. Mustafa.